We're at the 28th annual La Jolla Conference, and it's a great pleasure this year to talk about Ecuador. It's been, I have to say, several years since we've talked about Ecuador, or at least had folks from Ecuador joining us to speak specifically about Ecuador. Welcome, José Antonio Cepeda from the Ministry of Non-Natural Resources. If I got that right.
Energy and non-natural resources, and non-renewable resources. So
I knew I'd mess that up. Thank you.
good name, but it means a lot. So thank you for the invite. I mean, for us in the government, it's really important to be part of these pristine events such as the one you are doing, and it's pretty successful. And we are looking forward to welcoming you in Quito, 25th July, for the roundtable. We are looking forward.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. We've been working together with the ministry, and José Antonio did a webinar for us late last year, and that's one of the questions I want to talk to you about. But July 25th, join us in Quito, and we'll keep the conversation about Ecuador going. And what I wanted to ask you is, on the panel, you were making some clear points about this government, the new government, relatively new government's efforts to reactivate the sector, some changes with the national oil companies, some changes with licensing. Just take a couple seconds and explain to the viewers here what you're doing in Ecuador.
Sure. I mean, we understand what the companies need and what the companies want to be sure to invest their money, their capital in the country. So we take a pragmatic approach and we reintroduce the production sharing agreement. We had a lot of success in the round that was awarded about a week ago. We got about $1.1 billion in investments for smaller fields, and we are doing the second round at the end of this year. We are wanting to do a pathway so that companies can invest and can be part of the economy. I mean, the geological potential, the resources potential is there, and now we just have to give companies the certainty that they will be allowed to work in an harmonious way with the government. So that's part of that, and then we are also reorganizing our national oil company into one entity that will combine both upstream, midstream, and downstream, and that's another big project of us. So we have a lot of work, but we are moving around.
And of course, Ecuador is a member of OPEC, and you're actually the Ecuadorian representative of OPEC. So I want you to talk a little bit about this question we put to the panel, which is how much oil for how long? And you had some interesting comments. You sort of paraphrased the minister, but go ahead.
Sure. I mean, the joke is all, but I can tell it anyway. So, I mean, from a global standpoint, when you see at any forecast, demand forecasted to 2040 goes from 120 to 80 million barrels per day. It depends. If you go to a scenario where the world needs a lot of oil, it's 120. If you go to a scenario where we are compliant with the 2 degrees from the Paris Agreement, then you talk about 80. But anyhow, if you don't invest in the industry, you would have, because of the depletion of the fields, you would have a production that is lower than 40 million. So that wouldn't be sustainable for the world. So we have to invest in that, and Ecuador is one place where we have oil for the next 20 years. Yeah. The joke is that 20 years ago, they asked the minister how long will we have oil, and they told him 20 years, and now 20 years later we ask them and it's again 20 years. So, and that's kind of the thing it goes, because it depends a lot of technological breakthrough, new discoveries and so on. But I believe it's not the question how long do we have oil, it's more a question of how long do we need oil.
And I think one of the things we want to talk about at the roundtable in July is the sort of balancing the transition, the energy transition, lower carbon, like you talked about, the commitments of Paris, with a country like Ecuador that has a significant financial, national fiscal dependency or requirement from the oil sector, right? So these are challenging developments.
Yeah, sure. I mean, we have to balance the social aspect, the environmental aspect, and also the global responsibility of the global warming problem. Yeah. And of course it's challenging, but I think the solution is not an either or. It's not either oil or renewables. Yeah. It's more like a mix of both and living together in a sense that you can ensure the energy access for the people that need it and to foster economic development, but in a sustainable way. So that's why we were talking in another panel. A big thing is this decarbonization of the oil industry, carbon capture and sequestration, gas flaring, and these kind of initiatives that when you take it from a logical standpoint, they are more beneficial than probably renewables, because you invest $1 and you get more CO2 capture than if you invest into renewables. Because there's a law of diminishing returns. If you do too much of one thing, then it loses its impact. So that's why we look at a more broad approach and have kind of a mix. I mean, in Ecuador, the electricity grid is 80% renewable, so we are because of big hydro. But that in itself has these challenges because of seasonality, and then you need to put some fossil fuels to compensate and to ensure the stable supply of energy. So.
No, absolutely, and the issues of climate change will only further impact a very large dependency on hydro, that system. So, well, we look forward to talking about these issues and more. Thanks for joining us here at the La Jolla Conference. Great to have you.
Thanks, Jeremy.